Well, then let's get started and we'll see. Oh, there's somebody. Great. Okay, right at 7 o'clock. So, all right. So let's get started. And now people are pouring in as
Yeah.
usual the minute I start recording, and that's how it works. So wonderful. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? How was your first week? Let's check in and hear about your writing, successes, challenges, questions. Who wants to start? Dana, you were muted, but
Am I muted still?
there, you're perfect. Great.
Okay. I'm
Go for
having
it.
weird things with my computer. I don't know what's going on, not being
That's,
tech savvy.
ah,
Hi everybody. Good to see you.
hello. Yes.
So yeah, it was an up and down week. The best thing about my writing this week is I'm working on a mystery, and in the first draft I did, like, it wasn't right. Like, the mystery wasn't really mysterious.
Sure.
And I had a major breakthrough, I think, in reshaping the
Great.
story. And it makes so much more sense to me now, even
Yeah.
before. So I haven't really gotten into the rewriting, but
Okay.
I've done a lot of mapping. And
Great.
so that I'm really happy about that. Didn't get as much done this week as I would have hoped, but there was some positive movement forward.
It's funny because November is National Novel Writing Month, which I think in the US is not a great time to have it because, I mean, this year we had an election, but then we have Thanksgiving in just a couple of weeks. So people get into the holiday season. And so I feel like, maybe like July is the time to do it, or like, I don't know, January. I don't know. I feel like there are better months to
Yeah. Well,
devote
I've
to writing
always
a
felt
novel.
that way because as a teacher, it's
Yes,
the end of the first semester. And
sure.
so by mid-November, it's like work gets really busy anyways.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we are here, and November is challenging, but I do think it's a finite period of time. So hopefully we can immerse in it. But things are going to come up. And the truth is, any month of the year, things are going to come up. And what we're doing is building a writing practice and really focusing on how we can make progress. So I think that's why we're here for each other for the month. And hopefully we will come out of it on the other side with lots of words on the page. So fingers and toes crossed for sure. But Dana, that sounds like you made great progress and kudos to you. That's really exciting. So, hi, everybody. We're just checking in about how the first week went, what successes you made with your writing, and what challenges you faced. So, who would like to check in next? Anybody? Gretchen, did you want to go?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, so I didn't hit my goal. Um, I did manage to write every day, but not as much as I anticipated I could. So I'm gonna
Okay.
have to sort of figure that out. Um,
Now, what was your goal initially, and what did you end up writing?
2000 a
Okay.
day. And so I have, let's see, I'm at like 8,000. Let's see. I have 8,000 words.
Is that for 5 days, 6 days? How many days?
That's for the week.
But how many days did you write?
Oh, I ended up writing every day, so 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about 1,100 words a day. Um,
Hmm.
And I mean, it's not bad. There's no good or bad. Some people say
Yeah.
500 words is all they want. Others say, 10,000. So like, it's really up to you. So you could revise your goal, or you could see if you want to keep shooting for that. The big trick is to not berate yourself or be disappointed in yourself if you
Okay.
don't hit the 2,000 word mark. Yeah. Any challenges that came up other than that, or or successes to share?
Well, the challenges were as much as I wanted to do it the exact time at every time. Sorry, I have a dog. Um, I had company, and so I was a little annoyed that I couldn't, there were just times where I couldn't do my block. So this
Sure.
next work on, it might have to be a different time. I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Great. Well, good luck with that. We'll want to hear. So check in during the week. We want to hear from you. Who else wants to check in about the past week? Anybody? Achilles, did you want to go?
Yeah, I did some writing. I had planned to write in the morning for like 2 hours.
Okay.
Because I usually get up, walk the dog, get coffee, go to the gym, get back by 10, and that's at 10:30 to 12:30. I'm retired now, so I can.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, I do run some errands, do other stuff. But it didn't work out. I just didn't. I was like 10:30 to 12. Well, maybe I'll do it tonight because I have tonight have time. So I didn't like, and then the evening came and I was like, all right, maybe I'll do some writing. And I did some tweaking and I did some rewriting. And I think it's because I'm stuck on that blog, you call it.
The blurb?
The not the blurb, the
Oh,
what do you call like when you're stuck in the second half of the book or
the saggy middle.
saggy middle? And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm trying to get through it. I'm grinding. And then I go back to the first chapter. My first chapter is like awesome because I rewrote that to pieces. But then as the chapters go along, like the first 6 chapters, I got where I 2,500 or more words. And then
Yeah.
as in I'm going to the end, I'm like, they're getting so sparse. It's hard to like flesh them out for some reason.
So a great way to address that is instead of looking at like I have this much and I have to get to here, it's one step at a time. Like, what would be next? Like, what
Mhm.
has to happen next? And so you could just be free writing, like, okay, I just read the last scene before I get to the ending. What has to happen next? Just like one
Mhm.
little step at a time, and see if you can get a little progress. You know.
Right, right. That's a good
Like, is
point.
there a scene that can happen here, something that happens, or some revelation that can inch us forward? It's just inching, like if
Yes.
I were reading this, what would I want them to do next? And just do it one step at a time until you get yourself to the end. The saggy middle is tough because, we have to think about books are about tension and transformation. And so,
Hmm.
like, what kind of tension does there need to be that we then iron out in the story and that can lead to a transformation?
Hmm.
And so you could also spend a day plotting out the plot points, and you could
Hmm.
you could sort of write down what you already have, like on a almost like a timeline, and then in a visual way, and then say, okay, so here's my big gap. What are logical steps from here
Hmm.
to the end? And you may come up with some like out of the blue things that are really fun.
Right. Is there
Yeah.
a timeline worksheet that you have that's part of the class or not really? I could
No,
find one,
it's
right?
just sort of making your own in
Just
a
make up
way.
your own one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people it helps a lot of people to be visual. So you could
Right.
even get like a big piece of white poster board and like colorful markers and like sit on the floor, not at your
Yeah.
desk, so that you're stimulating different creativity
Right.
and just almost like you're coloring in a way. It
Hmm.
acts as a different part of the creative
Right.
brain, you know?
I'm using Scribble. I don't know if anyone's using that.
Mm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it has like what you have, like the plot point one, plot point two, I think, and pinch
Yep.
point. And I'm not
Yep.
sure what the pinch point is and the pinch point two. So I'm a little
That's not my
confused.
stuff. I don't know what the pitch
Well,
point is.
you don't have that, right?
Yeah.
Plot point one, plot point. Yeah, they have
Yeah.
all those. So anyway, anyway, I just gotta fight through it, I
Have you
guess.
looked
Yeah.
at the beat sheet in Wet Ink?
Yeah, I did. Maybe I got that. It's sort of similar, I think, that beat sheet.
Yeah, because it explains a little bit about like what each beat should
Hmm.
be. In fact, why don't I call it up and we can take a look at it together? Because I think that it's helpful to see. So let's see if I can do this. Hold on.
Was that from
Um,
Save the Cat?
yep.
I read that from for my screenwriting, a screenwriting class.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm just gonna let me pull it up and then I'm gonna share my screen. So hold on a quick sec. Okay. Okay. So let me share. Let's see. Okay, so the beat sheet has this premise. Can you guys all see it? Yeah? That the book is that we're talking about a novel now, but there is one in wet ink for memoir and nonfiction. But that your book should be divided into 3 acts. And the bulk of the writing is the second act, which is the saggy middle. So it's why you really want to, work with it. But what you take a look at is it's just sort of this roadmap where the character is on a journey of change or transformation or revelation or whatever it is. And so you want to go through these beats. So you come up and it tells you each one, like opening image, a before snapshot of the protagonist and the flawed world he or she inhabits. So it gives you a little bit of guidance. And so let's say, Achilles, I don't know where you are. Let's say you're done with debate or something. What it would say next is a single scene where the protagonist goes all into the new adventure, change, new world,
Hmm.
which bridges to the second act or the middle
Yeah.
of the novel. So
I
it gives
got to
you a
that
little bit of
point.
guidance.
I'm
Okay.
there. Yeah.
So 7 is the B story, and it's where you introduce a new character or characters
I
that
got
help.
that. I got that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but you may not have it all in this order. I don't know. How many words are you at so far?
I'm at like 30,000 words.
Okay. So you're about a little more than a third of the way.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. So number 8 would be multi-scene section. So multiple scenes that show the protagonist in their new world, loving it or hating it. So just really immersed in where they are. So it's multiple scenes, but of course every scene needs to move the story along. And then you get to a midpoint, which is either false victory or false failure. It could be like something that we think is a turning point, but maybe it's not. So I would take a look at this because it gives you some of these little, explanations that might stimulate some ideas.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that
Very good.
helps.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, cool. And also with your writing time, I know this is hard to do, but I find that when people write first thing and then go do their stuff, like the gym and the whatever,
Mhm.
they get the writing done. So I don't know if that means waking up before you have to
Right.
walk the dog or just, walk the dog, write, and then go to the gym. I don't know. Try it one day and see if you jump into the creativity,
Yeah.
you know?
Good point. Good point. I'll
Yeah.
try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking in. Anybody else want to check in about how this first week went?
Well,
Marissa, did you want to? Oh,
I
Carol,
thought I
Caroline?
was
Okay, go
I
ahead.
thought I was an evening writer, but it seems I'm a morning writer.
Okay,
So I rapidly changed to morning.
great.
I did apply for a retreat and I had to get 10,000 words down on paper, and I only
Okay,
had like 5,500.
okay,
So I wrote this week, and this particular retreat I've been interested in for a while in California.
great.
And so I had to get everything done. So I've had a good week.
Good.
Well, a good week of writing. I don't know what the book's like, but it's been a good
Great.
week.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. Congratulations. That must feel
Except,
good.
well, now I've got to redo my blurb.
Okay,
And thank you for all the cool points. That was a good awakening to
that's okay. That's what I'm here
really
for.
do some thoughts. So I appreciate it. If I redo the blurb this week, will you get a chance to look at it, do you think?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Definitely.
thank you.
You're welcome. Marissa, did you want to check in?
Yeah. So this week I was actually mostly doing outlining. I'm starting with a fresh project, so I will see how it goes. I'm definitely I prefer to be an over planner. I actually find it really uncomfortable to do any kind of pantsing activity.
Sure.
So, I have most of the book outlined, but it's funny because I'm actually struggling more with the beginning. I'm doing like a fantasy romance, like dark academia style, and I'm having trouble finding a cool way for my main character to get to the school.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of trying to brainstorm a lot.
So, 2 things to think about. And first of all, it's great that you're plotting it out. That's awesome. Um, just don't be surprised when the characters take you off a different direction, and then you just change your outline because they're talking to you, and that happens all the time. Um, what if you start with her already there? What if it doesn't matter how she got there?
It's so funny you say that because that is what my husband said too. And I was like, no. But yeah, maybe I think I'm actually going to start writing without the beginning. And then when I'm done, I feel like I'll have a better sense of where she needs to come from and then kind
Sure.
of start my rewriting process there.
Okay, sure. Yeah, sometimes we think all this needs to be in the book, and maybe you need to know as you're writing her, but maybe it doesn't, maybe it's not essential to the story, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Do you know what your writing routine is going to be, like your time of day or amount of time or anything?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to be an early morning writer. I
Okay.
normally like journal kind of in the morning. And I work as a marketer, so I'm in front of a computer all day, and by 3 o'clock, I don't want to
Yeah,
be near one. So
sure.
yeah.
Amazing. That's great. So you'll keep us posted. You'll check
Yeah.
in. Great. You know, it's funny. I was talking to my husband the other day about how, like, a couple nights in a row, I woke up at like 4 and I just couldn't get back to sleep. And you know, what's funny is that my dad's no longer with us, but he used to, for a lot of decades of his life, he just got up at some point in the middle of the night, went into another room, read for an hour, and then went back to bed. It was just how he was wired. And I thought, that could be me. And why don't I get out of bed and I could write, or I could just go read and like see. And so that is sometimes like a hidden treasure when you suddenly have this time and it's like, well, rather than agonizing over I'm not asleep, let me go do something with it. You know, one of my favorite writers, Diana Gabaldon, who wrote the Outlander series, she wrote her first novel from 12 to 4 in the morning because she was a college professor. She had 3 little kids, and that was the only time she could. I mean, I don't know when she slept, but you know, sometimes you take the time you get. So, you know, something to think about. Yeah. And Sheila, you checked in with me, but do you want to check in with the group a little bit?
Yeah, I was not productive at all this week. Um, and I'm just having a hard time liking my characters because I went
Mm,
back over, which I know you're not supposed to do, but I know the scenes, but I don't have the connections from one scene to another to lead you into a scene. And I know I'm not very strong with dialogue. So I'm sort of agonizing over that. And I've got my book project here up on the screen, and I'm like, I'm not sure I really like you people.
so that's so interesting. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. So there's a few things to say. First of all, the on ramps and off ramps for your scenes, you could do in the revision phase. You could just put in
Okay.
all caps in your document. I need a transition here, or just transition needed, you know? And so now you know when you go back to revise, that's something you're going to work on. So that can free you up to just put down whatever you can. Um, and the same thing with dialogue. Like you just write down stiff, ugly dialogue and then make it pretty when you go through revision, you know? So I think that you get better at dialogue in 2 ways: by reading and seeing how people do it well, and by just trying it and revising it. I mean, that's really the only way, you know? Um, Now, as far as not liking your characters, that's really super interesting. And if you don't like them, your reader's not going to like them. So you're providing a perfect transition into week two's content, which is all about characters. And so talk to me a little bit about how, like, why you don't like the characters. Like, just tell us about that.
Um, I think because it's not flowing and they're really starting to make me work for it. Because before it was like, oh, okay, I know, Ferdinand's going to do this. He's this type of person. And now I'm just like, I'm not sure I really like you guys. Even though I like I still like the premise of the book, but sort of, I think you touched on where like the defining moment is my main character dies
Okay.
and then has to go through a process in the afterlife. And I started before that point.
Hmm.
So I think I'm looking at this like, do I really need the first 6 or 8,000 words?
Probably
And I'm
not.
like, but then I only have like a very small. So I'm just sort of,
So I
I
would
don't
say
know.
this. I would say don't get rid of them, but put that in the back of your mind that you could cut them out if it's unnecessary. And why don't you just start from the afterlife? Why don't you just start from like, where does your character go after death? Like, is there a place? Like,
Uh, she goes to, I forget, I called it like hereafter evermore,
okay.
something long and unproductive.
So
But
why don't you start with her arrival there and
okay.
just see where it goes? And if you don't like the characters, why don't you look at each character, and you could spend this week doing character sketches where you really get to know them better and you write more about them, which can help with dialogue because you can take a look and assign different quirks or ticks or traits to them, like it can be a little thing like somebody says, like, I mean, that's a stupid one, but I'm just sort of pulling it out, So like that's something that one character does. So then every time you write dialogue, that character is going to be saying A at the end of their sentences. Again, you'll come up with better examples, but that's the kind of thing where you could give them some really quirky traits that make them kind of fun and kooky and like different, like you could think about, was there somebody you had a crush on in high school? Make one character after that person. Is there somebody that you like an antagonist that like there was a school bully or something? Make it that character and put all the feelings you had into them, like if there's um like your best friend, make one of your characters modeled after your best friend, like just to sort of have fun with it. And then you can think about the dimensionality that these real people have. So it can invite you to look for that in your written characters,
Okay.
you know?
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because if you don't like the characters, you're not going to want to write the book, you know? Cool. Any questions so far about any of the material or anything before we move into what week 2 is about?
I
Anybody?
just had a quick question on the
Yeah,
outline. Is that
sure.
something that you can take a look at and say, hey, something's wrong here, or you have to organically figure it out and change it as you go? It's not
Yeah,
fixed in
so
stone. I mean, is there like clues to say this is not a good outline? There's something's not moving well here or something.
so I will create a lesson that is to put your outline in there, and I can give you guys feedback on the outline if you'd like.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so I'll do that, and
Mm.
so that can be something that you can upload and put in there. Um, you don't have to, but you can if that's something that would be
Mm-hmm.
helpful. Okay.
Yeah,
There
cool.
is something called the inside outline, and so there's a business called Author Accelerator, and there are book coaches that are trained in that. I'm not, and I do know people who are trained in that, and so the inside outline is something that they use. So, like I said, I'm not trained in it, so I don't necessarily want to like present it because I'm not the one who's the expert in it. But I can, what I want to look for is, let's see if I can, because there was one little helpful thing. Let me look for it really quickly. And if I can't find it fast, then I will give you guys, I'll put it in wet ink. So let me just see really fast. Okay, I'm not seeing it quickly, so I will Oh no, here it is. Okay. So it's like your inside outline is plot, like what's the scene, what's happening in the scene, and then what's the point of that scene. And because of that, you go into the next scene, and what is the plot of that scene, and what is the point of it. And because of that, it leads you, and it goes on and on like that. So that's the way you write the inside outline: plot, point, because of that, plot, point, etc. And you go on. And again, I'm not trained in that, but it is one way that people outline the book that they're going to write so that it's all connected and it makes sense as the story unravels. So you guys could try that too. But I will put a lesson in there so you can put you can submit your outlines and I can give you feedback, okay? It's a great suggestion. Anybody else have questions or anything? Okay. So this week's lesson is really full. There's a lot about character development, creating compelling characters, how to develop these different characters, tips. There's a character development questionnaire, which I would love to take a look at with you guys really quickly. And it's just basically a bunch of questions that you want to ask your different characters. And if you haven't written character sketches, but you've done an outline, I would encourage you to go back and just do a little paragraph for each character so that you know who they are and why they're important to the scene and who's connected to whom. So I'll show you the character development questionnaire. It's just, like I said, a bunch of questions, and there's a lot. You don't have to do them all, but some of these could help you really create some very interesting and different characters. If you do all the questions, you don't necessarily need to share all of this information in your story, but you need to know it so that you understand the motivations behind your characters. So I definitely encourage you to go through the character development questionnaire and take a look at, what do I not know about these people that would, and what of that information is important for the reader and for moving the story along. So that is something you could spend some time on. And my opinion is that any planning you do, even character development sketches, is part of writing. So that's writing time. So it's not like that's on top of writing your words. That is integral to the story. So you want to make sure that you don't overload yourself thinking it's extra, okay? The other part of this week's lesson is all about research. And there is a research plan that's a resource in there. And there's 2 videos as always, but research is really important when you're writing about a place, when you're writing about a profession, when you're writing about, any little thing. Like I have a friend, Rochelle Weinstein. She's written 8 or 9 novels, really wonderful writer. And I read one of hers recently. It's called This Is Not How It Ends. Yeah. And it's phenomenal. It's a great book. But in that book, I think somebody has, it's either pancreatic cancer or some kind of cancer like that. And she did, really, really in-depth research to understand the way that I think she actually lost somebody to it, but she went through the different treatments, the different stages of the disease, and, all of that kind of stuff. She also had a chef in there and did a lot of research into, what would a chef's life be like? What would, the kitchen be like? Like, she's not a chef, so she would research that. So research is important for building believable scenes and building believable characters. And even if you're writing about the place that you live in or really well, then you have it easy because you can mention street names, you can mention, businesses or schools or whatever. But if you're writing in a different period of time, those all might be different. So research comes in throughout the book. And I would say that you can do it in the writing stage. You can also do it in the revision stage. And if you're going to opt for that, you could put a note in the manuscript when you're writing. I usually do it in all caps, but, get the name of a beer that was popular in this city at that time. and then you look it up later. Sometimes it's just a nice little break to start Googling and seeing like, who are the big breweries? Let's find them so I can, put that in there and have a little authentic touch. So it can even be like, in my second novel, Cave of Secrets, takes place in Scotland, and I looked up like certain dishes that, if I've been there, but like certain foods that are pretty common. I looked up songs that were popular at the time the book was set, popular music, just different things. So I think research is super crucial, but it could be a distraction. So you want to like put it in its time and place. So has anybody done some research for your book already? And if so, tell me about that. How did it go?
So with my book, a lot of it takes place in Chicago. Well, not a lot of it, but a portion of it takes place in Chicago during the early 70s. And so
Okay.
I did a lot of just kind of deep diving, trying to find, either other writing from that time, or just I looked like at maps of the city, and based on some of the things that, because one of the characters is based on somebody that I know, and so they're taught, things that they had told me led me, on these little trails. Specifically, there's this place called Bazaar in the city. It's a little shop, and then from there I found this like crazy movie. I think it's called Runaways, and it's got like Richard Dreyfuss in it, and it's just this movie about kids in Chicago who ran away at that time period, and it's just like perfect because the dialogue is just crazy and fun, and yeah. And I don't know how much of it I'll use, but it was fun. It is definitely fun for me to do research. I like it a lot. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my first novel, Woman of Valor, takes place in Skokie, Illinois, and I've been there, but I haven't lived there. And so I was like studying architecture styles that are common. I was studying street names, major thoroughfares, like, it takes place in the Orthodox Jewish community. So I was looking up like the names of pizza places and like, you know what I mean? So just to give that local flavor, which is really fun to do. And again, you can do it before you write or while you're writing. So you're like, oh, I need the name of a business here or whatever. Or you could just put a note to yourself, which I love to do because I just want to get it all down, and then I can perfect it later. Then the pressure's off, and I know it's going to come down the road. So, but just know that authenticity in your book, even if it's nonfiction, even if it's a memoir, your research might look like calling relatives, reading letters that like your grandparents wrote to each other, looking through photo albums. That's all valid research when you're writing a memoir, So I think, and frankly, that could, if I were writing a memoir about my childhood, it would be really fun to see like what clothing did we wear? What were the hairstyles? Like, I mean, I remember, but like to take a look at those pictures will remind me, and then I have something to work with. So research can really open up your writing, you guys. And I just encourage you to have fun with it. I think I mean, it's essential. You have to do it, but it can be fun. It really can. So anybody else about research? Anything you've done or want to do or anything like that, or questions about it? Sheila.
How do you do research when you are doing a fantasy type book and trying to incorporate supernatural elements? So like I know where I want my fantasy world to sort of mimic the 1930s and 40s, but I don't want it to be exactly.
Sure.
So I'm sort of stuck with the whole research thing.
So first, I think you do want to familiarize yourself with that time period in whatever place you want to take cultural elements or, whatever from. And I think the best research you can do when you're building a world, world building is super important in fantasy and science fiction and, all of that, is reading others in your genre, which might be a way to find your comps anyway, your comparable titles, which you'll need whether you self-publish or go traditionally. And so you could find, one or two or three that are close to yours or similar or in the same vein and read them and see how they build the worlds. Um, and I think also, I mean, reading is one of the best ways to learn how to write. Just seeing how other people are doing it and what do you like about it and why, and what don't you like and why. But also, you know, you could just do a simple Google search, just put time parameters on it. Like I'm only spending 30 minutes on this, but like, you know, supernatural novels, world building, and see what you get. Because there may be some articles, like honestly, there's something about everything out there, and you might learn something and like get some tips. So maybe that's your first stop and then you do the others, but I think it could be really interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Marissa has a note in the chat for you as well. So thank you, Marissa.
I was when I was writing the pages to send off to this retreat,
Yeah.
I was writing about, and this is supernatural folklore or just crazy Scots people. You could take it any way you want.
Uh-huh.
I remember so many stories that my, aunts, uncles, everybody, talked to me about. So I was researching the Kelpies, the Scottish Kelpies.
Yeah.
All I could remember was my mother threatening to get the Kelpies to come and get me when I was little.
Yep.
And then I threatened my own boys with the Kelpies until I thought, damn, I don't really know what the Kelpies are.
Right. And I
I know
bet you found a lot of things, right?
And I did.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. Like Gretchen said, delving into these things that, I've lived with my whole life.
Yeah.
It was just finding these things. And, also I have a portion in there about the seals and death to do with one of the characters, because most of my characters are based off people I know.
Of course. Yeah.
And hopefully they will never recognize themselves, but that remains to be seen.
So I'll tell you this, there are going to be people who will say that they're convinced that they're in your book and they're probably not. And then the ones that you did base them on are never going to pick up on it. So that happens all the time. It definitely does.
And
So,
Lynn, I ordered your book, Cave of Secrets, so
Oh,
that I
good.
can read it, and I'll let you know what I think.
Thank you. Please do. And hopefully I did it authentically. I tried
Well,
very hard. So
I'm sure I read your blurb. Your blurb was really good.
thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm like obsessed with blurbs now, and I think
Yeah.
Dana and Achilles did a great job on their blurbs, but I'm pretty obsessed with blurbs this week.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't know how to talk about our books, we don't know how to write them. So I started writing a blurb for the novel that I'm working on right now. And in fact, maybe I'll show it to you guys. Let me see if I can pull it up. It is still a work in progress. Let's see, here we go. So I may change this, but I think it's helpful to see the evolution of it. I've already made some edits. But so this is my blurb. When Charlie Tanner loses her life partner, she loses her voice. Words won't come, and the only solution is to leave the strict, cult-like agricultural community in Nova Scotia that she's called home for 2 decades and make a new start, processing her grief in the garden. Settling in Vermont, she starts to see how toxic her 20 years with James Grace really were. Charlie yearns to transform from her weak former self into a strong, confident woman who reconnects with her estranged family and finds new love. But her past haunts her, even shows up on her doorstep. Can she finally find freedom and happiness? I Love You, Charlie Tanner is a steamy story of second chances, midlife love, and starting over that'll keep you turning pages to see exactly how true love looks after so much sadness. So again, it's a work in thank you, Marissa. It's a work in process, but I shared this because I want you guys to notice some of the elements. So there is alliteration in this. I don't know if you noticed, but like toxic 20, what else? There's a bunch of them, like finally find freedom, steamy story of second chances. And I think that making it literary like that, like catchy, is really important. but also it doesn't, there's a murder in this book. There's a hot rabbi that she falls in love with, and none of that is in here. It might be at some point, but I don't know if it's as important because the blurb is to hint at things to get people to want to read it. And then in the end, I always like to have a question, like, here's the big crux of it, and then at the end, it's the title and this is what this story is. And I think that is essential to a blurb. So a steamy story of second chances, midlife love, and starting over, those are all tropes. And there's a reason that tropes work. People know what to expect. So we really want to try and use those keywords so that when people read it, it feels familiar and it makes them want to purchase. So again, work in process. It definitely needs some work still, but any questions about it? About how to do it or anything? Anybody?
How long is that one, Lynn? How many words is it?
138. Yeah. To be between 100 and 150 usually. And so this will be like on the back cover of the book. It'll be in the, marketing stuff and whatever. But you need to know how to talk about your book, and I'm not as good with the elevator pitch as I should be. So I'm working on it. So and it helps you to see the major plot points and the progression and all of that. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. What about characters? Do you know your characters well? Are there things, Sheila shared, some honesty, which was great. Can you, how do you guys feel about your characters, and do you know them well enough? Do you feel like they have depth? Or how did you come up with your protagonist? Anybody want to share that?
I can share it's kind of an anecdote. So my protagonist is, it's very based on me, like my background, right? Environmental lawyer, that works around the world. But in the first draft of the book that I wrote, one of the people who read the first draft came back and said, this is too much like you. And she, it's a friend, she knows me, but she said, I couldn't separate the fact that I know this is you from the fact that this is a protagonist in a book. There's just too much similarity. So that was something that, I thought a lot about and have, changed a number of things to kind of make it not exactly because in my mind, it wasn't me on the page. I was just drawing from what I knew.
Right.
But to them, that's how they took it.
So, and who is this person who offered the feedback?
It's a colleague of mine at work. So a friend, not a super good friend, but somebody who kind of knows me.
Sure. So I'll say this, most people's first novels are very loosely based on their own life. So that's something to know, that when you look at first novels, they're the closest of any of the novels to the author. It's just very common. We write about what we know, unless you're doing fantasy, science fiction, horror, maybe. But the other thing is, and we'll talk about feedback either next week or the week after, I don't remember which, I think next week. But I always say, be careful who you ask for feedback. If I ask my mom or my sister for feedback, they're going to say, oh my God, you're such a great writer. That is not helpful. It is very nice.
I can guarantee you this person was not one of those.
Okay. All right. It's nice to have ego strokes. I definitely appreciate that, but it's not going to help me make the book better. So I usually like to encourage people to find somebody who is a writer and a reader of the genre you're writing and understands what you're trying to do with the project, and can offer really helpful feedback, usually someone who's at your level of writing or better than you, so that they really can weigh in and it's meaningful. So a lot of times, like a best friend, spouse, my husband is my first reader, and he will give very honest feedback. So that's why he is, but not every partner is, so I think it's really important to be selective in who you ask for feedback, because not all feedback is equal. So that's something to think too. Because Dana, even if the character is like you, who cares? Right?
Yeah, and the character is still a very, because again, that's what I'm drawing on. It was just a very
Sure.
interesting thing to think about, that, right? Because there is that too, like like how much of yourself, because it's a very personal thing to put all this on the page, and so how much of that do you want it to be? It was a comment that just really made me think about it in a way that I hadn't before,
Sure.
in terms of who this character is, what traits does she have, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and maybe you want the character to be like you, and maybe that's okay. So when you do get feedback, you get to decide, is this something that resonates or not, you know? So that's something to think about too. But so that character is based on you. Are there other characters that you've created, like your antagonist? Where did that character come from?
So my antagonist um is is sort of a compilation of people out there that exist in the world. So the antagonist is a president of a multinational company that does bad things. And
Okay,
so that's where research came in.
great.
The name of the character is a compilation of names of some of these CEOs. The characters that are the most difficult is the book is set in Cambodia. And so there are a number of Cambodian characters, and I've spent a lot of time there, and they are based on people that I know.
Okay,
But because of Cambodia's history, um, with the Khmer Rouge and refugees, and these characters have this aspect. And so writing them in a way that, again, I'm not Cambodian, so writing the characters in a way that's authentic, but not, how do I say,
cartoonish.
not cartoonish, thank you, or using their stories in a way to push. And I did have one of the people I know in Cambodia look at some of the first book, some of the sections with these characters, just to say, what do you think? And he gave a lot of really interesting feedback, not just about the characters even, but about sort of the setting. And he's like,
Yeah.
people wouldn't actually say this; they would say this. So
Great.
that was a really interesting exchange too. But that's a challenge, and I know it's not unique to my story. Like, this is something a lot of people deal with when they're writing about things that they know or kind of know but aren't really
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. You bring up a really important topic. Um, I had a I had a sensitivity reader for my second novel, because one of the characters is a gay man, and I am not a gay man, and so I wanted to make sure that I was writing him respectfully and appropriately. And so after it was done, and I felt like it was, a really strong version of the manuscript, I had somebody who is gay, who lives in the same place he lives in the book. So, because he was there in like the 80s, 90s, and then present day. And so I wanted to make sure not only did I, write him authentically, but also captured the place at that time. Um, and, being a gay man in the 80s was a very different thing than it is today as well, because with AIDS and all of that. So it's really helpful to have a sensitivity reader when it's a culture or a race or religion that's different from you, which means somebody in that community who can read it and guide you. We're in a really tough, politically correct time in publishing, where some people believe you can't write about any kind of identity that isn't yours. I don't agree with that, but I think if you want a mainstream publishing contract, you probably are going to face that. And so, I mean, I think, Dana, you're probably in the clear because you've worked there and lived there, and you've had a sensitivity reader, and you could have another one when you finish and whatever. I don't think that they would care as much about Cambodia as if it were, say, a different race in America or a different religion or something, like, so you just have to be very aware that it's an issue, that's a hot button issue for people. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You just want to make sure. And I think I would do this for anything we're writing about. Like my next book, gardening is a huge part of it. I actually have a friend who's a master gardener, and I'm having her read it to make sure I'm getting the gardening part right. So you could have a sensitivity reader for any aspect. So I think it's just really important to be aware that that is, something to watch out for, just to make sure you're doing it authentically. And you can always find those people for sure. Yeah. Okay. And so we only have a little bit of time left. I want to ask you guys about how you are coming up with character names. Anybody want to share how you do that?
I took a really long time,
Yeah.
and I started out building a family tree
Okay.
because I was like, well, if their grandmother is going to influence them, I need to figure out which grandmother it is and make sure I'm saying it's the mother's mother or the dad's mother. And so I used old English names
Okay.
along with because they're supposed to be royalty. I'm like trying to find royal names that are, not in use anymore. And but my big thing was I really started to do family trees just for my characters.
Sure. I think that's really important. I love that you're looking at royal names of the past, although if you look at English royalty, they recycle those names. So Charles, Edward, Elizabeth, etc., Mary. Um, but yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. A lot of the names in my next novel came from a cemetery on Mackinac Island. I was there, and it's part of my retreat that I lead every September, which you guys should totally come on. But it's a really wonderful place, and there's these really, really old cemeteries. And I just was like jotting down cool names. And I'm not using first and last together. I'm taking like a name here, a name there, and it gave some really interesting names, like I think the earliest graves were the early 1800s or something. And so I came up with some very cool ones. So that's like a place. I sometimes also, like my Scottish book, I did research for that. I looked up names that were popular for babies in Scotland at the time that these characters were born, so that I could see what were the most popular names then. Did the same thing for the American characters. What were some popular names in, the 60s when the dad was born or whatever. Because Jewish identity runs through my books, I looked up a lot of Jewish last names to try to decide like which one do I want. That really informed their heritage, like where did they come from? What does the name mean? That kind of thing. So that was really fun. And I think that name research can be a fun thing, and also can help you make your book more authentic. So if you haven't thought about the names, see what you come up with. See if this is the best name or it's just sort of a default. Like my protagonist in Woman of Valor, my first novel, her name is Sally. I don't know how I came up with it, and I don't think it's the best name for her, but it is what it is, So, but other characters in there, I did play with names a little bit. So that's an opportunity for creativity as well. Anybody else on names? Want to share how you came up with them?
I used
Carolyn?
I used a twist of Gaelic.
A what?
I used a twist of Irish, because my family are Gaelic speaking.
Yeah.
I used a twist of Irish and Scottish Gaelic.
Yeah.
Like Ebba in Irish Gaelic is Eve.
Okay.
So
Great.
I twisted some of the names that way, but also I did the graveyard thing like you did, Lynn.
Yeah.
The last time I was home in my village, I went down the graveyard and just went around all the gravestones and
It's
used
fun.
variations. It is.
Yeah.
I did keep one character's name the same.
Okay.
That was a character called Johnny Onion,
Okay.
and I never changed his name. I kept him complete in the book.
That's
And
cool.
he was a character from my village, but I loved being down the cemeteries. Of course, that's weird to say,
No,
but
it's not. It's fun. There's so much history, so
yeah.
many stories. Yes.
And
Amazing.
there's so much here in America, like
Yeah.
North Carolina, when I was stationed there. North Carolina had a cemetery full of Scots who came
Oh,
over
yeah.
from the clearances.
It's
So there's so
huge.
many Scottish names here. So I recommend cemeteries, everybody.
Yes. Yep. Marissa, you were going to weigh in?
Yeah. Sometimes I pick my names based on plot points that is going to be like a big reveal, especially in the fantasy world, like how
Sure.
that works. Like one of the antagonist in this one, but she's going to be the main character in the second book, is named Penumbra, which is like it's a part of the eclipse, and like the magic is based on the zodiac, and so it's kind
Cool.
of like all interconnected.
I love that. That's really cool.
Thanks.
That's awesome. So we only have 5 minutes left. Are there any last questions that you guys would like to ask while we're here together?
Lynn, be sure and let us know about your retreats, because I've always wanted to go to that island.
Okay. So I will tell you, I think applications open in January. If you've been in, you'll hear, I'll tell you this at the end, but I'll tell you now. If you've been in any class of mine ever, I give a perpetual 10% discount. So, and I would accept you right away because I know you, to the retreat. So Caroline, if you want to go, it's September every year. And just email me and I'll send you the dates and the details. And I'll tell my partner Blake that in the retreat that you're already in, and so you'll just know that you've been accepted.
Is that Blake who's part of this group?
Yeah, it's his business. He runs
It's
it.
his business. We've had a lot of talks about Scotland.
Oh,
Like,
very cool. That's
'cause
awesome.
I just sent a retreat. I sent my stuff for Santa Fe, so that's why
Very
I'm
nice.
recognizing it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd love for you to go. Sheila, you as well. So just so you guys know, any class you take of mine on writingworkshops.com, you use the code welcome back in all caps, all one word, and you'll get 10% off. Anything you take with me through my website or whatever, you'll get that 10% because I know you and you'll just remind me, but I would probably remember anyway. So just know I do that for all returning writers in perpetuity. So yeah. Any other questions?
I got a quick question. I feel
Yeah.
that I'm looking back at my characters. I'm weak on the female characters, and I want to build it up a little bit more, make it flesh it out. And
Okay.
is there something like, do I think about, female characters in my life, or I just
Yes.
don't feel like they're fleshed out enough?
So I would talk with a female relative, friend, partner, whatever, that you know really well, and say, I want to understand how a woman would think about this, what her motivations would be. I want to get inside, like, how would you think of this? And I would interview them. Part of your research can be interviewing people to learn. And so that's a great way to do it. In Cave of Secrets, my protagonist Eve is pursuing an archival fellowship. My husband is an archivist. How do you think I came up with that career? So I was like picking his brain and asking him, and then he always reads my first drafts, and he made some corrections. I didn't get the career things right. So like, it's based on people we know. So that's how I came to that career. And I think that it's really valid to turn to someone well and say, I need help with this. And it'll help, get in the head of somebody else. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really wise to do that. We can only write about what we know, but then we can learn anything so we can know more that we have to write about. All right, you guys. So good luck this week. Dive in. Let me know if you have questions. And yeah, I'm excited to see how things go. I will add into Wet Ink the outline lesson, and I'll look forward to seeing those. Okay?
Cool.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Have a
See you
good
guys
week,
next
everybody.
Bye.
Good night.